I'd like to invite your attention to a very familiar passage of Scripture, the Gospel according to St. John, the third chapter, verses 16 and 17. And it reads as follows: For God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. I want you to focus your attention back up on the 16th verse, from which we will grab our subject, God so loved. God so loved. I was sitting back and pondering this passage of Scripture, and as I said, it's a familiar passage, and I became disturbed. I became distraught, and I became saddened because it had become apparent to me that we are having a great falling away from the church, because between all of the praise and worship and between all of the hoopla, all of the dancing and praying, we are failing to go out into the highways and byways and let the dying man and woman know that for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. I had to sit back and I had to think about the different variations of love, and how love had been shown and how love had not been shown, and how much did I really understand this passage of Scripture, and how much did I understand what happened that day on Calvary. Yes, I just wanted to let you know that it was God that so loved the world, that you and I and all of our friends, whether they're in the storm right now, no matter how their predicament may look, no matter how discouraging their lifestyle may be, we must let them know that God so loved the world that he gave his Son Jesus, that they too can have a right to the tree of life. When I think about the love that God has, I almost would like to compare it to that of my mother. Because you know how mothers are. Mothers tend to love us when we're up, and then mothers love us when we're down. Mothers tend to be there when we're on course, and mothers tend to be there when we're off course. But the love of the mother must be the closest, but still there's something missing, because God so loved the world so much that he could look down through eternity and look down when the world was full of darkness and see room for somebody like me. Oh yes, God so loved the world that in the midst of all the ups and downs that I may have to go through, God saw fit from the foundation of the world to plant down in 1960 a little bitty me. Yes, God knew that if he put me there, he knew that if he just started me on my way, sometimes I may bump my head, sometimes I may jump for joy, sometimes I may cry tears of sorrow, but God knew that he so loved the world that there was room for me and there was room for you, no matter what the circumstance may be. Oh yes, God so loved the world that he can take the crack addict right out of the crack house and set them in to God's house. God so loved the world that he can take the wino off the street corner and make him a deacon on the deacon's bench. God so loved the world that he can take the harlot out of the streets selling her body at night and wrap his loving arms around her and show her that she never has to be alone. God so loved the world. God so loved the world. And when you look at this scripture, you find out the intensity. You find out the degree, the measure. You find out the depth of how much he truly cares. You see, forget not and fail not to believe, my brothers and sisters, that you have been put here by some freak accident. Don't think that you are some kind of mistake. Don't think that God doesn't know your every whim and your every whim. God knows all about you. Before you were born, he knew you. Before you were ever conceived and thought of, God knew you. For when he was back and slinging the foundations of the world into orbit and masking the seas and the land, God so loved the world that he knew that he had to give up a son. Just think about it for a little while. How disturbing it must have been for God to look down from the beginning to the end. You know, he did say, I am the first and I am the last. Just think how disturbing it must have been for him to look down and to say to himself, what manner of man is this? But despite it all, and through it all, God so loved